Hello and welcome to the Lacrosse Show's NLL Top 9. We have finally arrived at 1 day away from the season starting. We're at our number one team in our countdown of the top 9 NLL teams as decided by us, and it is the Minnesota Swarm. It's a lot of vowels. I like it. That's an audacious selection. They finished 7-9 last year overall in the regular season. 4-6 against in-conference teams, 219 goals for, which is impressive. It's a good number. 202 goals against, not bad either. Mark, what do you think? What gave you the idea to put Minnesota at number one? It's got to be the youth, right? It's got to be the youth.
That's exactly right. In today's NLL, where we have a shortened bench, you're talking about 18 runners, because every team is going to carry 2 goalies. You have a roster of 20, so 18 runners, and you have less players on the team in general. You got to be in shape. The league last season imposed new transition rules. They shortened the amount of time you have to get the ball from defense to offense, from 10 seconds to 8 seconds, and we're really pushing to be more of a transition-oriented league. And I think that the Swarm are really well served to capitalize on that. Not just the rookies that they drafted this year, but a lot of the guys that they had last year that now have a year of experience under their belt, I think are really going to be some of the players that take the Swarm over the top this year. And they're actually probably the reason why I thought so highly of this team. Guys like Kyle Matisse, Shane Jackson, those, and Brock Sorensen. I really like what they brought to the team last year. Haas, they really were able to, infuse some of that transition game that I was just alluding to, and I think they're only going to get better with the guys that they got this year. The Jason Nobles of the world, Logan Schuss. I think that the Swarm are really going to be a nice up and down type of team. Who do you like on the squad?
Well, to continue your point of this youthful revolution, they had a ton of draft picks this year. 4th, 30th, 42nd, 52nd heading into the draft, and then I think they traded for 2 or 3 more. It was crazy. All of a sudden, it was just like, and Minnesota selects, and Minnesota, one guy going after the next.
4 first-round picks.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was the Minnesota Swarm's restocking period, which was excellent. It was interesting to see them go after so many guys. I think that they benefited from having a pretty good, pretty diverse draft class. A lot of guys with college experience and some athleticism. So I think you can see a guy like Logan Schuss or Jordan Helpe, who I think could really have a breakout role kind of as a transition player. I'd love to see that. But I think that those guys can really, make an impact right away. I think that they're athletic. I think that they're tough. And, you didn't see a ton of guys either brought in to training camp. It was a relatively small group. So we talk about chemistry and how important that is. Even for a young team, I think they're going to have it. For me, though, I really rely, if I'm the Swarm, on 2 guys, and that's Suter and McIntosh.
Great.
I think McIntosh quite possibly is the best player in the NLL right now. He's not as flashy as a lot of guys are, but he is extremely diverse, picks up a ton of loose balls. He can face off, he can play defense, he can ride, he can do all that stuff. And then you get him on O, and he's just producing goals. He's a proven scorer, has been from his rookie year. So, this is a guy who I really like as a leader, and don't even get me started on Suter. He's excellent.
Coming off of the ACL injury, I think what he brings to that team, both on and off the floor, is going to be important. Having him around, regardless of where he's at health-wise.
Mm-hmm. No question.
Yeah, being able to have more of a presence for him is going to be huge. One of the league's, I think he is the league's youngest captain, but that just speaks to the presence that he has and the command that he has of the locker room. One thing I want to bring up about the Swarm that's really interesting that speaks to what I was alluding to with their transition-oriented game. They're a team that's actually carrying more guys that are labeled as transition players, than any other position. They have 4. They have 7 transition players on their roster. Let me read to you who they got. David Earl, who we didn't even touch on, who's been an amazing American developing box lacrosse player. Might even be playing for Team Canada, apparently, in the World Field Championships.
Yeah, I think you can chalk him up as a Canadian at this point.
Right? David Earl, Cam Flint, Tyler Haas, Jordan McIntosh, who you just talked about, Kyle Matisse, Brock Sorensen, and Andrew Suter. I mean, geez, talk about a transition team right there.
Yeah, and I mean that's really the point that I think you were valuing highly this year when you were looking at who's going to be a tough out, was who has those legs, who's got that potential to not only play some good tough D out there, but then get the ball up the floor and put some goals in the net. And I would agree. I think Minnesota is strong in that regard. For me, one thing that they're going to have to clean up a little bit is if you run into a good defensive team, somebody who's really able to get back on you and you're not able to kind of get your legs going much, can they keep scoring down? For you, I mean, is their defense there? Is their goaltending there? Is that something that you have faith in to kind of validate them as a number one ranked team?
Yes and no. They've certainly had some turnover on the defensive end. A guy that I know you love, Mitch Belisle, doesn't seem to be back for 2014. But I actually think that they may have benefited in trading Kirk to Philadelphia, in that they had been trying to do this platoon system with him and Tyler Carlson, and it wasn't necessarily working out for them. I mean, it wasn't bad. But
so you like that they've now picked a guy and they're going with it?
I do, and I think that that'll really help Carlson's confidence. And that's important in the NLL. You got to have a guy. You need to have a capable backup, someone that you believe in, someone that you can bring in. But at the same time, I think that it's much better to have a defined role, and that's a situation where I'm looking for Carlson to improve on an already stellar young career that he's been having. Defensively, they're a young group. You're looking at Alex Krepinsak, a Canadian guy who played, I think, at RIT. Greg Downing, another American. Jason Noble, rookie on the unit. Jordan Hopi, who you alluded to, I think that he could be poised to have a fantastic year. Another transition-oriented guy. And they just made a great signing, who I think is going to really help them anchor the squad, Mike Hobbins on defense. So I'm anxious to see what Minnesota does, but I almost look at the way they've built this team to really take advantage of everything that's happened change-wise in the NLL, right? So the clearing time is decreased, the amount of runners is decreased. Now all of a sudden, when you get to the playoffs, it's a 2-game series with a possible 10-game mini game, to decide the whole thing. Who would you rather have? A bunch of 22-year-olds running around out there, or a more experienced team who's maybe got some guys in their late 30s, like the Toronto Rock, who I know you love so much, something like that. You know what I mean? I mean, I hate to say it, but that's why I went youth. I was so blinded by what they've been doing. They do have unproven talent to an extent, but I'm really excited by what they've got.
I like it. I mean, so many times you see a preseason list where, it's what I would have done, Rochester. And that's why a big part of the reason why we just went with your list overall. I mean, it was adventurous, and I love that. I mean, my top 3, you look at it, Rochester, Toronto, Vancouver. You've got a little bit of age, you've got a little bit of consistency on all those teams, and for me that's what it's all about. But I do think that you're going to see something interesting happen in Minnesota this year. They've also been getting a good turnout for games, and as well as Rochester. They've also been getting. I mean, I think Rochester had something like 10 or 11,000 people at a preseason scrimmage, which is awesome. So good to see that attendance numbers are up. I think for some of these top teams, they can see great attendance all year long. Yeah.
Ownership. Both of the teams that we looked at in the top 2 have arguably, and Colorado too, have the greatest ownership groups in the league. There are a lot of families obviously supporting the Swarm. They've done a great job of making those grassroots efforts in the community out there. People in Minnesota have really embraced it, and I think this is the year that Minnesota gets over the hump.
I like it. Prognosticator of prognosticators, Mr. Powers. If this Minnesota thing turns out to be accurate, you are going to look like a genius, my friend.
We'll see.
Exactly. That's kind of my reaction too. But, crazier things have happened. But this is it. This is our number 1 team. That means it's time for the NLL season to start. Enough of us. Time for some action. I'm looking forward to a little cross-checking. How about you, Mark?
Very much looking forward to some cross-checking. And in fact, all you viewers, stay tuned for NLL Live this season, where we're going to be, every week, we're going to be sitting down with some of the stars of the NLL. You guys will have an opportunity to chime in, maybe ask some questions, get to talk to your favorite players. So be on the lookout for that on TLN and YouTube.
And we'll be back with more videos discussing the current top 9 situation. We'll look back at our preseason picks. We'll do this at regular intervals throughout the regular season, so you have that to look forward to. You can even write in and tell us how wrong we were. Impress us with your knowledge and with your top 9, and maybe we'll give you a shout-out. Who knows? Hit up TLN on Twitter, Facebook. You know the deal. You've seen it before. For the Lacrosse Show, I'm Connor Wilson, joined by Mr. Mark Powers. Always a pleasure to talk NLL with you. Have a great day.